What's going on YouTube? Tim here coming at you from Team Vortex TCG, and today I have another deck profile for you guys, and this time it is in the form of Fire Kings. Now this deck I feel is not really a meta deck. It's not a deck that can compete too well with the current meta, but from playtesting this particular deck I can say that I have beaten some meta decks, or I have played some decent games against meta decks, and I feel like it's a deck that is kind of been overlooked for quite a while now. So I'm going to bring you guys my take on the deck, and let's just get into it. Now, one thing I will say with regards to the extra deck before I get there, it's not fully complete yet. There's a few cards I am missing, so I do apologise about that. But without further ado, let's get into the main deck, and without further ado, let's do this. So we play 3 copies of Fire King High Avatar Garunex. This card is probably the best card in this deck by a long shot. The ability of this to be able to be basically resummoned from the graveyard when it's destroyed by a card effect and blow the field up is absolutely incredible. Most of the time you want it to be destroyed by a card effect rather than being destroyed by battle, so most of the time you want your opponent to be forced to use resources on this card, so then you can actually bring it back and blow up the field. But sometimes that blow up effect can come back to bite you, because obviously you might have a full board and your opponent forces you to basically blow up the board next turn. But nevertheless, this card is one of the best cards in the deck in my personal opinion, especially at a 2700 beta as well. That is absolutely incredible. So moving on to the next card I play 3 copies of Fire King Avatar Yaksha. This guy is a great level 4 to have in the deck. Its effect reads: if a face-up Fire King monster you control is destroyed by a card effect, except during a damage step, you can special summon this card from your hand. If this card is destroyed and sent to a graveyard, you can destroy one card in your hand that you you can just destroy one card in your hand or that you can control. You can only use the effect of Fire King Yaksha once per turn. So this guy can trigger your Garunex if you need to destroy a card when this card's destroyed, or if a card is destroyed by a card effect, you can special summon this card from your hand. So you always have some board presence, plus at an 1800 beta, here's a fairly formidable body for you as well. And then, speaking of 1800 betas, the last Fire King card even, that I run in this deck is Fire King Avatar Barong. He has the same effect of Yaksha, where he can be special summoned if a card is destroyed by a card effect, except during the battle step. And his other effect says: during the next standby phase after this card was destroyed by a card effect and sent to a graveyard, add 1 Fire King card from your deck to your hand except Fire King Avatar Barong. So you can get your Onslaughts, you can get your Yakshas, you can get your Garunex, you can get quite a few cards from your deck to your hand with Barong. So I do like this card a lot, so I run 3 copies of this bad boy. So that is all of the Fire King monsters I run in this deck. Everything else just works really well in my opinion with conjunction with the deck, hence why I run obviously a lot more monsters than obviously just the 6 there. So the next card I run is 3 copies of Coach Soldier Wolfbark. This guy is one of the MVPs of this deck by a long shot. When I was playtesting this deck, I originally did not have him in the build, and then someone said, "Oh, why don't you play 3 copies of Wolfbark?" So I decided, okay, I'll pick up 3 copies of Wolfbark, see how it works. And this card is incredible in the deck. It's absolutely amazing. It says you can target 1 level 4 Fire Beast Warrior type monster in your graveyard, special summon it in face up defense position. Its effects are negated. You can only use the effect of Coach Soldier Wolfbark once per turn. So most of the time you'll use Wolfbark to get back your Barongs or your Yakshas or anything like that, and then be able to either exceed or be able to try and get your opponent to blow it up, because obviously the graveyard effect then does trigger. So this card, in my opinion, is one of the MVPs of this particular deck, hence why I run it at 3. I then run 3 copies of Bear in the deck, because I do run some fire formations, so I feel Bear at 3, well, not at 3 is a necessity. I would prefer to play 2 Bear, 1 Gorilla, but right now I do not have a Gorilla to hand, so I do run the 3 copies of Bear. Just because it allows me to go into my fire formation plays, plus just another level 4 for my rank 4 exceed plays. so this guy is a great card to have in the deck, either at 2 or at 3. Personal preference, as I said, I'd prefer to run a Gorilla, but at this moment in time I only have the 3 copies of Bear. I also run 3 copies of Fire Dog. This is one of the MVPs as well as the deck, as well as Wolfbark. This guy is absolutely incredible. Once this guy destroys an opponent's monster by battle, you can special summon a card from your deck that has 200 or less defense. So in other words, you can bring out another Fire Dog, you can bring out your YuGiOh, or you can bring out your Barongs. It's entirely up to you and entirely situational, I guess. But this guy is incredible for the deck, hence why I run him at 3. Plus he is a 1900 beta, so he is a fairly formidable body, and I'm sorry I just hit the camera there. But then I run 3 kind of techie cards, I guess you could say, within the deck. I run the 1 copy of Sacred Phoenix of Nephis, or however you pronounce that last word. This guy is basically a dark hole when he is destroyed, a bit like when Garunex is destroyed, he can blow up back row. This guy basically blows up the monsters. So once again, you try and force your opponent to destroy this card with a card effect, and then you can obviously be able to use the effect of the Sacred Phoenix. And then 2 cards that a lot of people get very confused about when I play this, like first turn, especially in defense mode, especially if they know what they're playing against. They kind of get a bit confused as to why I play 2 copies of Bajinji Wolf. But this guy basically protects beasts, beast warriors, and winged beasts from being destroyed by battle. So once again, it puts emphasis on your opponent to destroy your cards with card effects or obviously spell and trap cards, because then you can actually trigger their effects, whereas this guy protects them from being destroyed by battle. And normally if I see this guy in my first turn, I am very, very happy, because first turn I'll literally set him. And in the start of the duel, unless you're playing against like a pendulum deck that can basically flood the board with high attack value monsters, this guy will probably last a few turns. Plus I play 2 copies of him, because if I don't see one, or I have one and it gets destroyed, I then have another one for the late game, so I kind of can control my opponent with this card. So I think 3 is a little too cloggy, hence why I only run the 2 copies of Bajinji Wolf. So that is it for the monsters in the deck. The monsters and the spells pretty much take up most of the deck. I think the monsters is like the highest count in the deck, but that's the monster count anyway. Then for every single Fire King deck, in my personal opinion, you have to run 3 copies of Onslaught of the Fire Kings, and also 3 copies of Circle of the Fire Kings. And I say 3 and 3 because these 2 spell cards are the best spell cards you can run in a Fire King deck. Yes, okay, they're very simple in what they can do, but they're absolutely incredible, and they allow you to go into so many different plays. They allow you to basically trigger off your Fire King effects where they hit the graveyard. So 3 and 3 of these cards is absolutely essential in every Fire King deck, in my personal opinion. I have seen people make 3 copies of Onslaught and 2 copies of Circle work, but in my personal opinion, through playtesting, I prefer 3 and 3. Now I run 2 copies of Tenki and a single copy of Tensu. The reason why I say now is because I used to play 3 copies of Tenki, 1 Tensu, but in my personal opinion, after playtesting once again, I felt that 2 and 1 was the best way to go about things, just because it adds a little bit more consistency to the deck, plus it brings your bears / gorillas, if you have gorillas, into full effect, hence why I run 2 and 1 of those 2. Now I run 2 copies of MST for back row removal. The copy of Twin Twisters that I have is in my Noble Knight deck, which I showed you guys the other day. So that is why I run the solidary 2 copies of MST rather than 1 and 1 or 2 and 1. I would like to run 2 and 1, but I don't really want to take it out of my Noble Knights and then forget I've taken it out of there, go to run my Noble Knights and be a little bit confused as to where that's gone. So that is why I run these 2 copies of MST. And the last 2 spells I run is 1 copy of Dark Hole. Pretty much if I can't get my Sacred Phoenix out, I'm hoping to see this bad boy just be able to blow up the field and be able to trigger off my Fire King effects. and then the one copy of the card that pretty much every fire deck has to run. I wish this was at 2, even 3, but unfortunately it's at 1 at the moment. So 1 Rekindling is pretty much essential in every fire deck that is run in this meta at the moment, apart from Fire Kings. I don't even, not Fire Kings, sorry, Burning Abyss. But with Burning Abyss, I don't even think they are fire anyway. I think they are dark, but I might be completely and utterly wrong with what I'm saying there. And nevertheless, moving on to the traps, I run 2 Horn of the Phantom Beast. This card is absolutely incredible. Buffs your monsters even up to, well, gives them a buff of 800 attack, plus every time you destroy a monster through battle with the card that's equipped with this card, you get to draw a card as well. So it's a little bit of a draw engine for a deck that doesn't really have too much draw potential. The only stuff that you really so-called like draw is when you manage to obviously get your fire dogs going and that kind of stuff. So I do run the 2 copies of Horn of the Phantom Beast. I then run the 1 copy of Mirror Force, again just to keep my creatures alive through the battle phase. I also run 1 copy of Bottomless, 1 copy of Solemn Warning, and then a copy of Call of the Haunted. If I could, I would cut a copy of Call of the Haunted for Solemn Strike, but unfortunately at this moment of time I only have the 1 copy of Strike, and once again that's in my Noble Knight deck, so I run the Call of the Haunted instead. Plus it allows me to basically replenish my Fire Kings, so that is why I run the Call of the Haunted. So moving on to the extra deck now. As I said at the start of this video, this is not complete. There's a few cards I'm still waiting to get, but nevertheless this is my extra deck so far. So I run the 3 copies of Fire King even. I run Brotherhood of the Fire Fist Tiger King. This card is probably the best Exceed in this deck to go into, hence why I run 3 copies of it. Plus the amount of level 4s you run in the deck and the amount of potential that you can special summon with the deck means that pretty much every level 4 you run or can run, every rank 4 you can run or can run in this deck, then I would thoroughly recommend it. I'd recommend at least playing 2 copies of Tiger King in the extra deck for Fire Kings, because obviously, as I said, you run so many level 4s in the deck anyway. And then the rest of this, as I said in my Noble Knights, kind of just fits in with the theme or fits in with what I'm trying to do with the deck. So that is why I run these cards. So I run the 1 copy of Castal, pretty much a staple in every extra deck I run at the moment. I then run a copy of Vylon de Sigma, 1 Maystroke, Silent Honorarch, again I run this in pretty much every extra deck at the moment, 1 Master Key Beetle, Dark Rebellion Exceed Dragon, a Ghost Trick Alucard, and a Gagaga Cowboy. I would also put in Abyss Dweller and Diamond Direwolf. In fact, I'd run 2 Diamond Direwolf and an Abyss Dweller. So I kind of need 1 space to fill up in this extra deck, which I'm going to try and look into in the future and try and actually gain that extra slot that I need to gain. So hopefully I can do that fairly soon. But this deck is still playable with the cards I've got at the moment. I would end up just putting a few cards in that I have in my Noble Knights into the extra deck, and this deck would be ready to roll anyway. But nevertheless guys, that is the end of today's deck profile. I hope you did enjoy it. Obviously Fire Kings, as I said, aren't the greatest deck in the world right now, but they have a little bit of potential in my particular opinion. So that is why I do run this deck every now and again when I go to my locals. But nevertheless guys, thank you so much for watching. If you did enjoy the video, please leave a like, rate and subscribe to the channel for more trading card game content. If you are into video games or you like watching people play video games, please be sure to go and check out my gaming channel. I'll leave a link to it in the description as always, so go and check that out if you like the sound of that. But anyway guys, this has been my Fire King deck profile. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.